I'm a big enthusiast of 72 megahertz radios. The government licensed that frequency for use with toy airplanes. So, you know, use it or lose it. I have several radios there that are ready to fly. They're installed in airplanes. Here's one that's waiting for an airplane. I got several more up there that are charged up and ready to go. And I don't see anything wrong with 72 megahertz. However, I had a little issue. Last summer, my old flying buddy from when I used to live in Osceola, he was here visiting, and we were flying the prototype for my new kit and another airplane. We were using these two radios. This is a JR Max 6 that's on channel 17, and this is an Airtronics Vanguard 7 channel on channel 36. And both airplanes crashed when the radios quit responding. So that sounds like radio failure, radio interference. A lot of people online told me, hey, you use old radios, they're junk. Well, they didn't wear out and fail within half an hour of each other on the same day. That's ridiculous. And it wasn't some kid turning on an airplane radio, because for one thing, I live out in the middle of nowhere and there's nobody around here. I'm the only one that has any open space in the area to fly an airplane. The rest of it's woods and hills. And the other thing is, how would somebody shoot down two planes on different channels at the same time? That's crazy. So it must have been something else. I took the question online on RC groups, and several smart people told me it must be some kind of interference on 72 megahertz. But there was one guy who suggested that a cell phone searching for a signal in an area with a poor signal could send out a burst to the tower and overload the encoding chip that takes your stick positions and turns it into a pulsed signal, and then it feeds it to the radio transmitter. The cell phone burst could overload the encoding chip before the signal gets to the radio transmitter. So that would suggest that the transmitter was transmitting a proper 72 megahertz signal of garbage that was because it was interfered on the front end by a cell phone. Now, I have a terrible telephone signal here, which goes along with that theory that the cell phones would be searching for a tower. But the smart guys online who know a lot more about electronics than I do, they said, no, that's impossible. A cell phone cannot interfere with a model airplane radio on 72 megahertz. But that actually wasn't the theory. The theory was that it was interfering with the encoding chip that sends the signal to the FM transmitter. So I don't know if it's true or not. But I decided to try something new. I decided to buy a 2.4 gigahertz RF module from Lemon RC and a receiver. And I was going to install it in this Futaba Conquest AM radio that's in actually very nice shape. Now, this is why I like old radios, really. It doesn't have a screen. I hate radios with screens because I am an airplane enthusiast, not a radio programmer. I don't want to be scrolling through menus and pushing buttons and all that nonsense. This radio has everything I want in a transmitter. It has reversing switches, which is nice, and it has 6 channels. There's a 3-position flap channel. I use flaps sometimes. And a 2-position landing gear channel, which I would use as a bomb door or something, because in 35 years of doing this, I've never built an airplane. Wait a minute. This is 2026. I've been doing this for 40 years. Holy cow. But in 40 years, I've never built a plane with retractable landing gear. I'll use that switch for something anyway. And it has dual rates if you want them, and then it has adjustments for the rates. And that's exactly what I want in a radio. So I was going to put the Lemon RX transmitter module in this transmitter. The Lemon 2.4 gigahertz transmitter module It's quite an affordable little unit, and it fits right in your transmitter case, usually without any trouble at all. So this old AM transmitter had a radio signal board right here, which I took out and threw away. And then all I had to do was tap into the connector to get the positive voltage, the ground, and the ppm signal, which is the code for the servos. And then I lifted this up and used a servo cable attached to the board, and I mounted the lemon module right there. Now here's what I found out. This chip right here is a particular chip used in some old-fashioned Futaba transmitters that is well known to be susceptible to interference from a 2.4 gigahertz module. So what it does is it takes your stick positions, turns it into a pulsed code, and this is the chip that makes the code, the digital code, which then feeds that code to the radio module, which then puts it out the antenna. But I replaced that with a 2.4 gigahertz radio module, which put out a signal which interfered with the chip, and it interfered with the code that I was making with my sticks in a feedback loop. So the code now is scrambled, so when it feeds it to the 2.4 gigahertz module, it sends that RF signal back and scrambles the code. And the result is that the servos twitch, and they twitch more than you would want them to, and you would notice that in your flight performance. The next thing that happened was that a very helpful gentleman on RC groups told me that I should build a filter. And he gave me the schematic, and I ordered some parts from Mauser, and I built this little filter that he told me to build. It has a 5-volt regulator. It has a transistor that takes the signal from the encoding chip, and it squares the signal up a little bit, and basically what it does is it filters out the noise that comes from the transmission module. And it's very easy to build. But the unfortunate news is that it didn't work. So I took it out. And then I remembered that I have another radio. The guy gave me this radio here, this really nice 6-channel. That was a freebie that a guy gave me from a box of junk that he had for years, because he knows I like old radios. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to use it. So I also had this Sky Sport 4-channel Futaba that was in a box of junk for years. You can see all the dirt all over it. I don't know where this came from, but the crystal was missing, and I've never used this radio. It was just a junker. So I decided to put the lemon module in it. As you can see, I have the antenna there. And it was really easy. I took the trainer plug out. Actually, it's not the plug, it's the socket. I took the socket out, and I took the signal from there and positive voltage and the ground, and just connected them to that same servo connector and plugged it in. And that lemon module is right in there. And as if by magic, the back of the radio came off. Here's the lemon module right here. I have it stuck to a piece of plastic. And then I put a piece of plastic down there to insulate it from the hot line on the meter. And then it just gets tucked under that antenna wire. And here's the line from the binding button, which used to be a trainer switch. And then there's a servo cable that goes down to connect to the wires that used to go to the trainer port. Yeah, the trainer port went in the trash. And there it is. It was very simple. It was as easy as it was supposed to be in the first place. Not like that other one that had all the trouble. Now, just so everybody can see how well it works, here's the lemon receiver. And I'll go ahead and plug it in. Plug a battery into my transmitter. I've already bound the two together. I like how you can see the LEDs through the battery meter window. So that's exactly what I wanted. No twitching, no problem. Because it doesn't have the funny encoding chip that the other radio has. So here's another radio that I really like. It's an old Aristocraft high-tech Challenger 7-channel radio. This is pre-1991 narrowband sticker, I believe. And so it would be a good candidate for the 2.4 gigahertz module because it's a wideband radio and 72 megahertz, and I probably shouldn't use it that way. So that's my next project that I'm going to use the lemon module for. But now here's the twist of the story. So when I had these dependable radios that I've had for years, I use them without worry. They work great. And they both crashed last summer. And somebody suggested to me that it might be a cell phone in a poor signal area, which I'm in, sending out a burst that overloaded the encoding chip. And people online told me that can't happen, that's impossible. However, isn't that exactly what happened to this radio? That it got a signal from the RF module that overloaded the encoding chip and scrambled it and made all the servos twitch. So that makes me wonder, why couldn't a cell phone do that to these radios? I don't know. So maybe the answer is to just fly my old radios and make sure there are no cell phones around, because I haven't been able to reproduce the problem. So this is something I'm continually working on. I'll get it figured out sooner or later.